Hi, everyone. We're going to give everyone a couple more minutes to join. So just hang tight and we'll get kicked off in a minute or two. Jamie, I want to be like, cue the music and have there be some beautiful music just playing. We're just going
We
to
should. It's dinner time for some and happy hour for others. I think good music would be great.
if you've got a beautiful voice, now would be the time to break out in song.
Unfortunately, that isn't me. I was not blessed with a beautiful voice.
Me neither, girl. Me
We'll
neither.
save it.
All right, we'll just wait maybe just one more minute and then we will jump into
Okay,
it.
that sounds great. Okay.
Okay, I think let's go ahead and just get started. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to join us. We're going to be diving into the topic of, as you can see here on the slide, strategic selection, technologies and treatments for your med spa, and tips to drive and convert new client leads. Jamie and I especially love this topic because, as you all know, in the aesthetic space, it is growing and changing all the time. There are an overwhelming number of new services, solutions, technology, devices out in the market. And it's really difficult to know, okay, what's the thought? What's like the thought that should go into making a decision on the technology that you're bringing into your aesthetic business? And then how do you drive leads to it, right? Because we all know you can't just buy the device and then business comes to you, you have to do things. So we're really excited to dive into this topic. So for quick introduction, my name is Shannon Blake. I'm the Director of Medical Spa Partnerships here at Podium, and I am joined here with a very strategic partner of ours, Jamie Adkins. She's the Director of Business Development at MedShift. We actually recently formulated a partnership between our two teams, recognizing that both are offering something extremely important to the aesthetic industry. And we wanted to bring to you some just educational content from our backgrounds and expertise. So we hope you find value in the content. We're excited to share with you. But without further ado, Jamie, if you want to jump to the next slide, I want to give everyone a peek at some of the topics that we're going to be diving into today. So we've got technology and treatment selection, where Jamie's going to start out. This is her area of expertise. And then she's going to transition into integrating technology for growth. And then I'm going to step in with my background. I want to talk about all the things lead gen and conversion strategies, heavily leveraging text and automation and AI. So it should be a fun topic. And then we're going to close out with some Q&A. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, be sure to type them in and we will get to those at the end. And then for anyone, I know it's late, depending on where you're located around the country, we are going to be sending out this recording in the next 24 hours. So don't worry if you need to hop off a little early. This will be sent to you via email tomorrow, so you can play it back if need be. All right, Jamie, should we jump into it?
Yes, I would love that. And thank you, Shannon, for the great introduction. As Shannon mentioned, she and I are super excited to be partnered together. Our companies, MedShift and Podium, formed a partnership this year, but I've had the privilege of knowing Shannon for a couple years now. I have been in the aesthetic industry for almost 14 years, and I've had the privilege of working on more of the manufacturer partner side of aesthetics. So I have seen, as Shannon said, so much innovation in this industry, which is really one of the reasons why I like it so much. But as a med spa owner or an aesthetic practice owner, I think one of the most challenging decisions that you guys have to face is really when you are expanding your business and you're adding new treatments and new technologies, where do you start, right? Where do you start? It's a huge endeavor to figure out, with all of the noise in this space, where to start with new technologies. And I'll ask everybody a question. Have you ever been in a situation where you've had a rep come into your practice and they're trying to sell you a technology? Maybe it's a $100,000 piece of laser equipment, right? And you get excited about it because you think it's the best and you buy it. And then your rep leaves you and you never hear from them again for about 2 to 3 months. And then all of a sudden, who knocks on your door? It's that same rep, but they're working for a competitor. And of course, they come in and they say, I've got the latest and greatest technology, right? Well, the challenge there is not that the technology is not great. It's probably really good technology, maybe a great laser, both of them might have been. But the question you should be asking yourself is it right for me, right? Is it right for my practice? So the key thing that I think you all need to consider when you're starting to think about incorporating new technology or treatments is really what questions you have to ask yourself, okay? And I think we can all see here, of course, you need to ask yourself why, when, what am I going to bring in? And then, of course, integration, which is how am I going to do it? And the why really needs to be your number one question, okay? Because there are some reasons, I think, whys, essentially, that aren't great reasons to bring in a new technology or treatment. But some of the things to consider would be money, right? We're not nonprofit business owners. Of course, we'd all probably love to run a nonprofit and feel good about our business, but we're all here to make money. So that's kind of the number one reason that you need to consider when you're thinking about a new treatment or technology. And I think the next is patient satisfaction. Is a new treatment or new technology going to enhance or maximize or improve some of the treatments or treatment outcomes that you already provide? So is this going to make your patients happier if you have more to offer? Another great reason, I think, is if you essentially just want to diversify your portfolio and fill in service gaps in your menu. So maybe you only have one or two treatments and you realize that, just jumping straight down the list here, that your patients are looking for something different. That may be a really good time for you to bring in a new treatment or technology. And then, of course, a big one, which is right at the bottom here, I am jumping around, your patients are asking for it. So if your patients have heard about a treatment or a procedure or some sort of technology and they're asking you questions about it and you start to hear it again and again, that could be a good reason to consider bringing that new treatment or technology into your business. And then finally, if you find that you have more time than you have patients, which unfortunately is kind of the nature of the beast right now. I just saw in a survey done of over 800 med spas by Spark Medical that treatments were down this year and the number of patients coming into practices was down this year. So while that's a little bit scary, it may mean that to differentiate yourself, you have to diversify and bring in a new treatment or technology to get patients coming back a little bit more frequently. So those are the things you need to ask yourself when considering the why, okay? But I think another extremely important question, even more so than what you're going to bring in or how you're going to do it, is when. There are definitely wrong times to bring in a new technology and treatment. And I think, again, the first thing you have to consider is where are you in your business life cycle? Okay, and you can see this little chart here. I put it for a little visualization, but really, if you're in that maturity phase or you're in the decline phase, you might be considering retirement. You might be considering an exit strategy, in which case you're probably trying to pay off all your debts and get rid of overhead, right? Which is what these big PE firms and big groups want to see if they're going to acquire you. So this is probably not a good time to bring in a new treatment or technology. And of course, if you're a mature business, you've probably done this 100 times already and you've been successful, and you might be better at giving this presentation than I am. But if you're in that intro phase where you're a brand new business or you're just starting to grow, this could be a relatively good time for you to start considering how you're going to expand and how you're going to increase your profitability. So a question to consider beyond just where you are in that life cycle is, what treatments do you offer already? Could you offer some complementary treatments and bring in new technology that will complement what you're already doing, or as I mentioned before, fill in those service gaps? And then, of course, what treatments attract your patients? So again, citing that Spark Medical survey, which I thought was so interesting, most of these practices that they surveyed, I think the request or the demand for semaglutide, for instance, weight loss, was up by 73%. So you have to think about what's going to attract your patients, because if you choose something that is not in demand or your patients don't want, guess what? They're not going to come to you no matter how much you market or how many cool tools you bring into your practice to expose them to it. And then another real important one that I think gets overlooked is, do you have the bandwidth to perform a new treatment, right? If you bring in a new technology and you're really excited about it, are you just starting out And I would say that probably 50% of some of the new med spa businesses that I'm seeing today are operated by a solo practitioner, maybe a nurse or a PANP, and they're working 2 or 3 days in the hospital, and then they're trying to do 2 or 3 days at the med spa. If that's you and you're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week already, do you really have the bandwidth to bring in a new treatment or new technology? And then also to do all the planning to make it successful. So unless you're willing to hire somebody and delegate that treatment, you have to consider your own bandwidth, because time is money and your time is your money. And then finally, your service mix, your profitability, and your cost of goods. If you haven't memorized these for your practice, go out and memorize them. These are KPIs that every med spa and aesthetic practice should be measuring. And they're really critical, when you're speaking about profitability, your gross profit, which is really net sales minus your cost of goods. You need to be looking at that, right? Because I think a lot of providers, they start in this business with injectables, which has one of the highest cost of goods of any treatments or procedures we're doing, right? So it may be a good time for you to start to consider what other treatments or procedures can you bring in that have a more profitability, right? A lower cost of goods, so that your service mix has high profitability on average, okay? So that's something to consider as well. And then just jumping into considering what's important to you and your patients. So of course, I'll run through this kind of quickly, but we all know that safety is of the utmost importance to our patients, and it should be to us as well when we're considering a new treatment or new product. We should look for safety studies, and your patients, they're gonna look online. They're getting savvier and savvier now that information is at their fingertips. They're gonna go out and see whether everybody who's had this treatment had a great reaction to it. Were there adverse events? Are there horror stories? Safety is critical. And I think you should always be looking for companies that are reputable, right? They have tried and true technology. If you're gonna invest $150,000 into a device, you wanna make sure that the company you're working with has a good reputation, right? And they have recognition. And same for you as a provider. Your patients are out there and they're searching online for who does the best Botox in my area. If you think they aren't, you're wrong. They definitely are searching right now. So your reputation, just like a manufacturer's, is critical, especially when selecting technology. And then it goes without saying, training and support is so important to you, from your manufacturer to you. And I say training in general because everyone in your office needs to be trained. And I don't mean that everybody needs to know how to perform a thread lift, right? But everyone in your office has to have a good understanding of what this new technology is or treatment is, so that they can talk about it. They're going to be your best sales tools. So having training, having a rep that supports you, asking the questions of what kind of warranties am I going to get? What kind of support do I get after I give you my $150,000 for this big piece of equipment? Those are all questions you need to ask yourself and need to consider when you're selecting the right technology or treatment. And so I've got just a couple slides here that are really more geared towards either startups or those that have been in business for a couple years and they're really in that growth phase. But for startups, some tips you need to think about when you're going to select your new technology. One, is it going to give you a good return, right? Everybody talks about ROI, reps come in, and some of them even have ROI calculators, which are great. But ultimately, if you're going to make an investment and you don't have much of a patient base, you want to make sure that you can pay that device off in just a couple treatments. And when I say a couple, I mean, it's more realistic that it's going to be 6 or 10 or 12. But you want to make sure that you're not stuck with a $2,500 equipment payment and you're not getting enough patients in to cover, right, the cost of those payments. So high ROI means a high return on investment. You're going to be able to pay that device or product or equipment off pretty quickly. And that's why a lot of providers are doing handheld devices for their first investment, and then they're kind of graduating to these much larger platforms. Preserving cash flow. Again, it goes back to money. We all want to make money, so we have to look at how much we're going to spend up front so we can have enough cash flow to operate the business. So again, it goes back to, do you want to make the huge investment for capital equipment up front, or do you want to invest in something that you're going to be able to pay off quickly, build your patient base, and then eventually invest down the road? And then this is probably the theme of the night, but is, what do your patients want? right? If there's a demand for a procedure or treatment, that may be something to consider bringing in. And I mentioned that on that study, I think semaglutide had grown by 73% over last year. Well, similarly, body contouring was down by 45%. So that's probably related, right, to semaglutide and the fact that it's easier to lose weight now. You don't just have to rely on body contouring equipment, but it's a good case against investing in a huge piece of body contouring equipment unless you know that's something that your patients want. And then I said it before, but have a plan from start to finish. Know what you're looking for. Obviously, know your KPIs, understand your profitability and your existing service mix, and then have a plan as to not just how am I going to pay for this device and bring it into my practice, but how am I going to market the device? How am I going to get my staff trained on the device? And if you have all that mapped out, it'll make it a heck of a lot easier to get patients asking about your new treatment or technology. And then speaking to businesses that may be a little bit more established, right? So you probably already have your a patient base. Maybe you're already offering injectables or a combination of treatments. But if you're thinking about adding a new technology, my first recommendation to you, and if you're a device rep and you're listening, cover your ears, but it's going to be go broad, right? Start with a multi-modality system or a platform system. And what that means is those types of systems, and today, most manufacturers carry a platform system or multi-platform system. It just means that you can treat for lots of different things. So hyperpigmentation, wrinkles, red spots, some do psoriasis, skin tightening. If you have a platform that will do all of those things, laser hair removal included, then guess what? You make one investment and you can treat a much wider range of patients. I'll give you a perfect example. Lumenis has a Stellar M22, and I'm not plugging Lumenis. I think they're a great company. We work with them, but that's a great device because it does everything. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? They also, their reps love to sell their TriLift. TriLift does one thing. So if you're a relatively new business or you're in that growth phase, just really consider the opportunity to offer multiple options to a lot of different patients. I think it's a great way to get started with a new technology. Second is consumables, and that goes into this last one, number 5, which is cost conservation. Some devices have really high costs for their consumables. So consider this, you've just invested $100,000, $150,000 into a device. That's not the end of your costs. Now you've incurred a cost per patient because every time you treat a patient, you've used one consumable, right? And I'm kind of exaggerating it, but you have to factor in that metric into your cost of goods, including your time, right? A lot of these technologies require you to be treating the patient. So that's an important one to consider and may have an impact on what you ultimately decide to buy. And then downtime. So thinking about downtime and what your patients want, it will be much easier for you to sell something initially or to launch a new technology if you don't have as much downtime, right? Especially if you're a little bit of a newer business and you haven't been, expanding your technologies in your practice already. If you give patients a treatment that has little to no downtime, think like IPL, laser hair removal, they're going to be satisfied, right? They're going to come back to you and say, hey, that didn't hurt much. I didn't have any downtime. I didn't have to hide behind my Zoom camera when I was in my meeting yesterday. And the chance of them coming back to you is much, much greater, right? If they don't have downtime, if there's not that perception of, oh, this was a really tough procedure or there was pain. So just consider downtime when you're also considering technology. And technology today has gotten so good, and there's so many pieces of laser equipment out there that are relatively pain-free, and downtime is really diminished. And then this don't assimilate, differentiate, just be very selective when you choose a technology that everyone else around you has. So look at your competitors down the street, see what types of treatments they're offering, what procedures, what technologies they have, because that may be a good indicator that the market is flooded already and it's going to be tough to convert people to that new treatment or technology. A perfect example of this, and I'm not knocking it, it's a great procedure, but CoolSculpting, right? That's what happened to CoolSculpting. They have just an awesome device. It definitely works. We know that it works, but at one point, everyone and their brother down the street was getting CoolSculpting. So then they had to go back to their existing customers and sell a second, a third, a fourth device, right? it's hard to keep all those machines busy. So just keep that in mind. And then finally, going back to costs, look at your short-term costs, right? Look at your costs of good. Look at your costs over time. So that means what I mentioned before, service, support. Some of these devices, it's $5,000, $10,000 to add another year to your warranty. That adds up, right? If you've only had the machine a year or two and you have to pay out another 10 grand to keep it in operation, that's expensive. So all of that needs to be factored in to your costs, right? Your cost structure, so you can continue to be profitable with the device. And that's kind of the first piece of this, but now we get to the how, okay? Which is integrating your technology so that you can continue to grow. So I think Shannon even said it in her introduction, if you build it, they will not come. And that's the truth. For most things, right? There are some interesting phenomenons with products like semaglutide, we're seeing it, patients are asking for it, injectables, it's happened before. But for the most part, you're gonna have to work at it, okay, to get to be successful. So my kind of opinion on this is that, one, if you have a great manufacturer and you have rep engagement, that's gonna contribute to your success. If you have champions inside and outside the practice that are talking about your new treatment or technology or just your business, that's gonna lend to your success. And then being seen, being heard, of course, and also finding the right tools are all critical. And I'll go through each one of these. I'll try to be quick so Shannon can jump right into how to develop leads, which is what we all want to know. So I mentioned rep engagement. When you meet a rep for the first time and they're trying to pitch their new technology, get to know the rep, right? Have they been bouncing around in the industry and they're moving from job to job every year, every 2 years? If that's the case, I'm not saying they're bad, but they may not be there to support you long term. So ask those questions, get to know your rep, understand if they have a vested interest in your business, because if they do, and they have some longevity with that company, they're going to be there to support you long term. And that means not only support if something happens to your equipment or your products, but support in helping you plan strategies to attract new patients, helping you plan events, supporting you at events, right? And those are some of the most profitable or lucrative things you can do to promote a new treatment. So keep an eye on your reps and get to know them really well, make them your best friends. Having champions inside and outside of your business. So I'll go back to that message about training, but have multiple points of contact in your practice, right? So when a patient walks in through the door, they see a poster about a new technology. They see a counter card. They see on your reels, on your TV and the reception area, if you have a big reception area, they're seeing advertisements, they're seeing before and afters. Just stay top of mind with your patients from start to finish through their entire journey through your practice. And then when I say let your employees work for you, train them up and let them sell for you, right? If somebody has used your new technology and they've gotten the treatment and they like it, they're going to be more inclined to talk about it. So everyone from the front desk to your nurses, to your estheticians, whoever's in your business should be able to talk about this, new treatment or technology you have, and then incorporate it into your intake process, your consultation process. Make sure that at every opportunity, whether a patient's walking in or they're leaving, that you're talking about that new treatment or technology. Give it as much exposure as possible. And do that inside of your practice as well as outside of your business. So we all know most of us operate in areas where there are other businesses located really close by. Go out, network, meet with the community, and share your story. And then finally, this is a little bit of a repetition for you guys, but repetition is the name of the game here as well. Rinse and repeat, right? Repeat all of your efforts again and again and again. And I think if you're looking to hire a third-party marketing company or an ad agency, don't just stay with them for 30 days or 60 days, because guess what? They're not going to produce the results you want. You need to repeat, 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 and remain consistent in order to be top of mind with your patients and that new technology. And this is a given. Always provide before and afters. Always provide visuals for your patients with whatever you're bringing in, because that's going to be the first thing that they want to see. Right? They want to look at somebody who's gotten great results and say, that could be me, okay? And finally, find the right tools to support your marketing and sales efforts. And this is where Shannon is the expert, but one thing I will say is consolidate your tools, okay? And that you could have 8 to 10 or 12 different tools doing different things for you, a POS system, an EMR system, a marketing system, before and after, whatever it is. Start to try and consolidate to make your life easier and to increase efficiencies, and then automate as well. And you know what, I'm going to hand it over to you, Shannon, because I think a lot of this lends to what you do so well with Podium. So I'll close it right there. Shannon, if you want to share a little bit more about the tools, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for all of that perspective too, Jamie, on like what should be going into your decision-making process when buying a new device, because I think a lot of times folks naturally lean towards, well, what's the hottest device right now? But there's so much more that goes into it. And I love that you broke down like where you're at in your business. How long have you been around? What are your patients asking for? Like, what is your brand and what do you want to be known for? And is that device on brand for what you offer and where your expertise is? And so it's just so much good insight into everything you should be thinking about when making such a big decision, because they are very expensive. So with that being said, I am going to dive into a couple additional ways for you to be thinking about how you get as much activity with these devices as possible. Jamie did mention a couple really good ones, like, for example, having your current employees promoting it to your client base. Absolutely. You've got to have champions as well promoting it. But let's say, like, how are you getting the word out about this new device to people who have never been in your practice, right? So that's primarily what I'm going to be talking about, is how do you drive these leads to your new device and how do you convert them and win in that speed to lead race that all aesthetic businesses are dealing with, especially with how competitive this industry has become over the last few years. So a couple additional things that I wanted to highlight from this slide is, first and foremost, you have to have a good reputation on Google. If you don't have a strategy today on if somebody is just searching for a med spa near them or top med spa in my area or, you know, top Botox provider or whatever it is, you want your business to show up in the top 3 spots. So just a fun exercise to do, whether right now or after this webinar, I encourage you to go to Google and literally just do top aesthetic practice in X city. Don't do near me, because if you're sitting in your practice, it's all going to be skewed, but just put in your city and state. And if you're not in the top 3, this is an area of opportunity for you, because this at the foundation is, if anyone's even just looking for your practice, regardless of your new device, we want you showing up and traffic being driven to your website or for them to call you or contact you. So the only other thing I want to say about reputation management that I think gets misunderstood is it's not just about having the most Google reviews. Your star rating matters. How often you're getting reviews matters. What the reviews are. Are they 5 words or are they a story because you created such a great experience? All of that plays into where Google is placing your business based on their algorithm. So I just wanted to highlight that. So that's like bare minimum. If you're not top 3 spots, start thinking about a strategy of how you're going to do a better job at collecting more reviews. This isn't a pitch for Podium, but that's one of our core products, is we make it really easy for you to collect those via text. So if your strategy is hope people have great experiences and just go and leave you a review, probably not the most effective strategy. So just look at solutions out there that can help you collect Google reviews easier. Also, text marketing. I could talk about this all day. There are a lot of solutions out there. I would say the majority of aesthetic practices are doing email marketing pretty well, and they're doing Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, all great, but text marketing gets you the most eyeballs by far. It's a 98% open rate. So if you've got a subscriber list, you should absolutely be sending out text marketing. It's going to be the fastest way to drive awareness to any new device you have. So likely this is more relevant for folks you kind of have in your ecosystem, whether it be prospects that have never actually been in your aesthetic practice, but have engaged with you and maybe had a consultation or just some questions and you've got their information, or they're your current client base and have opted in to receive special text promotions. So if you don't have a good text marketing solution, absolutely be shopping for that. And then also things like having a text widget on your website. We talked about showing up in the top 3 spots when somebody's searching for a business like yours, right? Well, naturally, the next step is if you have a good reputation, they're going to go to your website. You have an easy, modern way for them to connect with you. One that we recommend is a text widget on your website. Contact us forms are a very old school way of grabbing leads. It doesn't hurt to have it on your site for anyone who still enjoys filling those out, but I will tell you, your potential clients will thank you if you have a text widget on your site where they can just put in their cell phone number and question, and you can text back and forth answering any questions they have. So just make sure that you're offering modern options like that for those folks that prefer text. And then Jamie, I think already mentioned this, but having a memberships and loyalty program as well is a really great suggestion, especially for getting folks as repeat customers as you're bringing in new devices. All right, let's get into the nitty gritty of like lead gen and conversion strategies. So really quickly, I just wanted to kind of remind everyone the world that we live in today. And this is all really taking place in the last decade. I'm sure you recognize every single brand on here. They're all disruptors. They have created very high maintenance consumers in this world. We all know it. I'm sure we engage with most of these companies. We love them because they make things easy. Like Walmart, the fact that you can have your groceries dropped off at your doorstep versus having to walk through the store and take all of the time. Like there are so many conveniences that are created by these companies that you need to remember that's the world in which you're running your business. These patients of yours, these clients, they expect that level of convenience. So be thinking about that. What kind of communication tools do you have? Do you make it easy for them to do business with you, whether it be the way they're communicating with you, whether that's text or phone, but also how are you collecting payments? Like be thinking about, are you a fully modernized business that's making it really easy for people to do business with you? So I just think that's important first to mention. And then I'm sure this will resonate with many of you, but it's getting really hard to meet those expectations that these big brand names that have disrupted their industry have created. We as consumers expect if something's on our mind and we have a question, we want to clarify something, we want to hear back from the business within a minute, a few minutes tops. No more 24-hour response times. It is immediate, instant gratification. I need my information now. It's on my mind. And so meeting that expectation can be really hard. So looking for solutions that can help make it easier for you. So that's what I want to start talking about. Here are just a couple of the types of communication channels and ways in which leads are coming to you. And if you think about this for your particular business, are your contact forms on your website going into some email inbox somewhere that's muddied up with a bunch of other emails? Where are your Google ad leads going into? What about your Instagram DMs, your Facebook DMs, your Facebook ads, your text messages, your phone calls? Like there's so many different ways that clients are communicating with you, especially in aesthetics, because it's such a social media driven type of industry, right? And so finding a solution that, number one, will bring all of those leads and all of those communication channels into one singular inbox. So Podium is one solution out in the market. Obviously, I'm passionate about it, but please do your homework and research on tools that can consolidate and bring all of your leads into a single place. And ideally, it's a robust text messaging platform, because the reality is we still have some phone callers, right? Phone's still a commonly used form of communication, but text is preferred by a landslide. So having all of these leads go into a texting platform where you can instantly engage, it's just a faster way to convert your leads. So not only consolidating them into one place, but having that be in a robust text messaging platform with lots of bells and whistles. I thought this graph would be really interesting to share with y'all, just to drill down the importance of response times. If you look here, I know this is a little bit small, but essentially what this is showing you is depending on how fast you get back to your leads will show how many more leads you're converting. It is significant, like a 4x on less than 5 minutes. So that would be my challenge to y'all, is how fast are you getting back to all of your leads? And if it's not within 5 minutes, you're leaving revenue on the table. So here are a couple solutions that we've listed out to winning in that speed to lead game that we're all dealing with in this hyper competitive industry. Already talked about the first one, flowing every single communication channel and lead channel into a single platform to make it easy for your team, your patient coordinator, to reply back to all of these leads. Having a single phone number is another critical component. I'm sure many of you are dealing with, you have your business phone, you have a texting platform, maybe, you have your EMR who has your appointment scheduling and your appointment reminders are going out from a different phone number that's not two-way textable.